Australia joins in the search for a missing jetliner after two large pieces of debris are spotted by a satellite in the Indian Ocean.
Plus, just announced a national shrine of John Paul II is coming to the United States. We'll have the story.
Ahead of Tuesday's Supreme Court hearing on two of the many challenges to the HHS mandate, we offer some expert analysis tonight. And the Pope reaches out to Italian steelworkers. We'll share that visit with them. Those stories and much more just ahead on EWTN News Nightly for this first day of spring, Thursday, March 20th, 2014. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Brian Patrick in for Colleen Carroll Campbell. Looking at news now, a big clue in the search for the missing Malaysia Airlines plane. Searchers are calling it the best lead so far as they try to find out what happened to Flight 370. Satellites spotted two large objects just a few hours away from the Australian coast. Searchers suspect it could be part of the plane's wreckage. 4 planes worked today in that area to find exactly where those objects are. They haven't had any luck so far in finding anything, but plan to resume the search tomorrow. Chad Wolf joins us now, the Senior Director of Wexler & Walker. He worked in security policy at the Transportation Security Administration. Chad, in your experience with TSA, as you look at this situation, are there any red flags from the safety standpoint connected with what you've heard about this flight?
Yeah, from a security standpoint, I look at the cockpit security of that aircraft. And what we've heard and seen going back as far as 2011 does raise a few concerns for me. So there are reports that the pilot has invited passengers inside the cockpit for the duration of a flight, has been seen smoking in the cockpit of the aircraft itself. So therefore you have a flame, you have a potential ignition source in the aircraft itself. These are all very, what we would consider no-nos inside aviation security post 9/11. So from a security perspective, those things do give me a little pause.
Yeah, we also heard that there was a flight simulator in the home of the pilot. That's unusual, isn't it?
It's not extremely unusual to have a flight simulator. You know, a lot of aviation enthusiasts do that. However, as they begin to pull files and the deleted files and try to recover those files, it's been reported that there have been a number of landing sites that were on that simulator. So I'm sure that investigators are looking at that and piecing that together with possible landing sites out there.
What about the final comments from the cockpit? All right, good night. Would that be something that would be out of the ordinary, or is that normal protocol?
No, to my understanding, that's normal protocol. Once you sign off and you sign off from one system, and as the plane continues to make its way along its route until it picks up a new set of air traffic controllers.
What do you think TSA is doing in this time as they look at their own system and really analyzing what's going on here?
Yeah, from TSA's perspective and from other security agencies around the world, they really have to treat this currently, until they get more information, as a terrorist-related incident. And so that's causing them to do a number of different things. If you do assume it's a terrorist-related incident, then you have to assume that it's in the operational phase. And so that will kick off a number of things that they do both internally and with their international partners to make sure that, one, the aircraft does not reach the U.S., but again, that they're working with their international partners to make sure that nothing else occurs.
Based on your experience, everything you've heard, do you have any thoughts on what might have happened?
My experience is that oftentimes the most complex conspiracies and plots are the most difficult to pull off. So while there's a lot of critics out there that are looking at a variety of different scenarios, from where it could possibly be landed to where the aircraft could possibly be going, I think that's good. I think they should be doing that, but they need to continue to look at other possible scenarios. So whether it's a mechanical, a fire, or even a hijacking, or whether it's the pilot, the crew, the ground crew, or the passengers. I think all scenarios and all possibilities need to be looked at.
Well, thanks for your expert analysis. Chad Wolf with Wexler & Walker here in D.C. Now let's take a look at some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. The founder of a controversial Protestant church has died. 84-year-old Fred Phelps died early this morning. His group, the Westboro Baptist Church, has been the subject of sharp criticism. You might recall that church rose to prominence after protesting soldiers' funerals while displaying hate-filled signs. The group also blamed the tragic situations on America's tolerance for homosexuals. Russia has made some poor choices. Now its leaders, and perhaps the Russian people, may have to face the consequences. That was the tone of President Barack Obama's statements on the South Lawn of the White House today. He pointed out that the international community has rejected Russia's military move into Crimea. He also announced some possible new sanctions.
I signed a new executive order today that gives us the authority to impose sanctions not just on individuals but on key sectors of the Russian economy.
The president expressed concerns that Russia's military is now positioned in a way that could lead to further incursions into southern and eastern Ukraine. He added that America and its European allies are working closely on more severe actions if Russia continues to escalate the situation. Well, it started out as a missing person search, but what police found was a house of horror. Inside this filthy house, they found more than 100 people. Police think it was part of a human smuggling operation. The people who lived in the house had no hot water, and one officer said it was the worst he's seen in quite a while.
Largest number of individuals in a stash house that I've seen, that we've encountered in probably the past 5 or 6 years.
Immigration officials now have those people in custody. They say they will be fed and then questioned. Conflict in the Middle East and Northern Africa has left thousands in search of a better life. Many are making their way to Italy now. Leaders say that they have rescued 4,000 refugees in just 4 days. Meanwhile, immigration officials are stepping up patrols near the coast to crack down on smuggling operations. You might recall last summer the Pope made his first pastoral trip to the southern Italian island of Lampedusa. He met with migrants and threw a wreath into the water to mourn refugees who have died trying to reach Italy. Nearly 43,000 migrants arrived by sea in Italy in 2013. A shootout in Northern California leaves a deputy sheriff dead. This happened yesterday afternoon after the deputy confronted a carjacking suspect. That suspect then opened fire with an assault rifle. Another officer showed up a short time later. The suspect was killed after a second gunfight. An Army general will not spend time in prison. Prosecutors charged Jeffrey Sinclair in connection with sexual assault complaints, but he pleaded guilty to reduced charges. A judge sentenced Sinclair today to pay a $20,000 fine. The Army will also formally reprimand the general. A shrine to John Paul II here in Washington will soon get an upgrade, and it coincides with the late Pope's canonization next month. Jason Calvi is at the place that we had called for quite a while, the John Paul II Cultural Center. Jason, explains the change for us, if you would.
That's right. It used to be the Cultural Center. Since 2011, it's been the Blessed John Paul II Shrine. That's after the Knights of Columbus took over. And come April 27th, this place will be named the St. John Paul II National Shrine. That comes after a decree from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. We spoke to the Shrine's executive director, who shares with us his hopes for this place.
Our hope is, and our vision is, that we become a place of prayer and pilgrimage for the entire nation, but also really for the entire continent. We'll be a center where people can come to pray and to bring their petitions and ask for the intercession of St. John Paul II, but also with our catechetical element, the exhibit that we have in the lower level. People will actually, they'll go through that exhibit, and the life of St. John Paul II will really come alive.
Now, that exhibit won't open until this summer. But come next year, there'll actually be a big church here. It'll be opened in 2015. Now, what you're looking at right now on your screen is a relic of John Paul II, of his blood-stained cassock from the assassination attempt back in 1981. They're also going to be receiving a new relic, a vial of John Paul II's blood that was given to the shrine by the personal secretary to John Paul II, Cardinal Gibich. Now, where I'm standing right now is just a temporary exhibit. There's things like this beautiful chalice, which John Paul II actually donated to the former Cultural Center. This hat here, a Filipino boy gave to John Paul, and John Paul II actually wore it during one of his visits. Lining all of the walls are beautiful pictures commemorating the historic papacy of Blessed John Paul II. And right behind me is a real treat I want to show you. This is the cassock and cape and pastoral staff that John Paul II used during his historic papacy. Brian?
All right, thank you, Jason Calvi. St. John Paul II has a wonderful ring to it. The head of the Vatican's highest court visits the United States. Cardinal Raymond Burke just finished lecturing at his alma mater, the Catholic University of America. He discussed his work leading the High Court, which hears various appeals from marriage annulments to the closing of parishes. Cardinal Burke also addressed the upcoming World Gathering of Bishops meeting on pastoral challenges to the family. In preparation, dioceses have been asking whether the annulment process should be simplified. The Cardinal said the current law to review each annulment case twice is necessary. While in D.C., Cardinal Burke sits down for an exclusive EWTN interview. You'll see it tonight on The World Over with Raymond Arroyo. Coming up, a watchdog group is working for women. In just minutes, what the World Youth Alliance is doing to keep the UN on its toes. Then later on, we'll tell you about the steps a Vatican library is taking to move into the modern age. That's all coming up on EWTN News Nightly. Well, Fortune magazine is the latest publication to honor Pope Francis, naming him the world's greatest leader. The magazine says the Pope stands out in a world, quote, starved for leadership. Other media already talking about this. You see here a post on CNNmoney.com about it. In the year since his election, the Pope has been named Person of the Year by Time magazine, and he also made the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. Fortune is a business magazine published since 1930 by Time Inc. In Rome today, the Holy Father met with thousands of Italian steelworkers and their families. He was all smiles, greeting people, shaking their hands at a crowded Vatican hall. He also kissed more babies, as he does so often. Pope Francis told the group work is essential for human dignity and should be available to all. From Rome to Paris now, a famous landmark in the City of Lights has undergone a lighting makeover. The Notre Dame Cathedral now has a new pair of lights. The lighting designer wanted the landmark to look and feel like it did when it was first built. It's now much easier for visitors to see parts of the cathedral typically hidden in shadows.
The sensation of the stained glass is more beautiful, more clear, and more even possibly acute.
These new lights won't require any maintenance for at least 10 years. Back in the U.S. at the United Nations, women are front and center this week. The Commission on the Status of Women is meeting at the UN. We're joined now by Anna Halpine, founder and CEO of World Youth Alliance, a global coalition of young people who promote the dignity of the person. This group founded at the United Nations in 1999. Anna, you've been part of these gatherings there at the UN now for several years. What happens at these meetings?
Well, they're really gatherings that bring together primarily governments to discuss specific thematic materials and documents, as well as civil society. And we obviously play a part on the civil society side.
So gender equality and women empowerment are terms that are often used. They're as a priority for the UN. But how do you think the UN defines these concepts?
Well, that's one of the really important things about these meetings is trying to figure out the definitions of these concepts. There are no hard definitions in these documents, and so governments need to make sure that what the end result delivers is something that all of these different countries can live with, and they can interpret these according to their national laws and customs. So it's really a big discussion and sometimes a very aggressive debate to figure out how we can find terms that are agreeable to everyone in these particular areas. And gender is a particularly contentious term. It was introduced at the initial Beijing conference in 1995, and there's always been a sense between delegates that there's room for firmly defining this term as either a biological construct, meaning the difference between a man and a woman, or a social construct in the sense that people decide what type of gender they might wish to pursue. And that's still a pretty open definition at the UN.
So as a watchdog group, the World Youth Alliance is an accredited NGO, non-governmental organization. That means you have access to UN meetings. How do you view the UN's approach to women's issues?
Well, it's important to remember that the UN is really a platform on which the governments of the world come to discuss and negotiate and provide these final documents. And so our approach is really to be there and to work with delegations, to work directly with governments and ambassadors, and to try to influence those outcome documents to make sure in this instance that everything we're promoting for women really respects their dignity and respects the type of vision of women that we think is necessary for their full participation in society And the theme this year is also economic development and work.
Considering what you stand for, considering what you stand for, do you find the UN to be a hostile environment?
Well, it can be, for sure, but we also find a lot of really courageous people there who are very eager to present these ideas well and to work together to find ways that we can reach consensus with other delegates. There are many people of goodwill, and a lot of the work that we try to do is really to take the commitments that the UN embodies, commitments to things like the dignity of the person, to religious freedom, to informed consent in healthcare and other areas, and to make sure that the UN lives up to those commitments. And we find there are many people who are willing and eager to work with us in those areas.
All right, Anna Halpine of the World Youth Alliance, thank you for joining us from New York City tonight.
Thank you very much.
And Anna, I want to remind our listeners, our viewers, that the World Youth Alliance is celebrating a milestone. It's been 15 years since that group was founded. It's now active all over the world and has 1 million members. For more information, if you'd like to get involved, go to wya.net. Membership is free, and of course, you can find them on Facebook and Twitter. Up next, can a corporation have religious rights? That's part of a discussion we'll have on challenges to the HHS mandate to be heard by the Supreme Court on Tuesday. And scholars worldwide will soon have instant access to thousands of ancient Vatican manuscripts that are about to be digitized. We're just days away now from a landmark hearing. Tuesday, the Supreme Court hears 2 cases on the Affordable Care Act's Health and Human Services mandate. Both Conestoga Wood Specialties and Hobby Lobby stores are owned by Christians, and they say the mandate violates their faith because they have to provide abortion-inducing drugs to employees. James Capretta, a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, is joining us to talk about these cases. James, break this down for us. What are these cases about, and how might these cases affect those that were filed by Catholic organizations?
Sure. In the 1990s, Congress enacted a law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA, and it protected everybody's right in America, the United States, under legislation to practice their religions. The 2 companies in question have come to the Supreme Court and said, hey, you know, this new law, this mandate, is violating our religious freedom, the ability to provide a health benefit in accordance with our conscience. What's being tested is whether or not people who own companies like this can operate their businesses in that kind of a fashion according to their religious beliefs. It's a very important case because it could set a very important precedent for all businesses across the United States. And it also has implications for the Catholic cases. These are not the Catholic cases per se, but I think the whole question of whether or not religious freedom is going to be allowed to operate in the employment sector beyond, just minimal, houses of worship exceptions is a big, big question. And so these cases have very big implications, not just for the companies, but also for the Catholic Church.
Do you think it will get down to an issue of whether or not corporations have religious rights similar to those of individuals?
Certainly that's what the government is arguing. They're trying to argue that it doesn't extend to individuals. But of course, companies are run by individuals. Mm-hmm. And so in these particular cases, you have companies that are really owned and operated by a Christian family. They've owned them for many, many years. They've operated them according to their conscience for many years in many very good and positive ways. It's hard to imagine the United States, which has been built essentially by families building their own businesses and generating income and jobs that way, that religious freedom wouldn't extend to people who have operated in that kind of an environment.
Now, the deadline to sign up for the Affordable Care Act is very near, within 6 days or so. How is that going to put pressure on this case, or even will it?
Well, they're somewhat unrelated. I mean, the deadline, as you indicated, for signing up is March 31st, but the question of whether or not these mandates will apply will go on well beyond these sign-up dates. So this litigation and these cases, even at the Supreme Court level, will continue on into throughout 2014 and probably into 2015 for the Catholic cases. So the sign-ups will occur. People will be getting into health insurance. They're separate and apart from whether or not employers have to live by this mandate.
Of course, in the category of the Catholic cases, EWTN, our network, has filed a suit joined by the state of Alabama challenging the HHS mandate, so we will be watching that closely. James Capretta, Senior Fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Well, you may think of war when drones are mentioned, but they could change the way we do business in the future. There are many rules that still need to be worked out, though. EWTN News Nightly's Susie Pinto has more.
50 feet above ground, a camera on board an unmanned remote-controlled vehicle captures stunning views of this suburban New York City home.
It has a unique view of the house and the surrounding areas. It really is very impressive.
At the owner's request, pictures from the drone are being used to help sell this luxury property overlooking the Hudson River.
People gather around to come see it. You know, it's an adventure. It's a cutting-edge tool.
Right now, the FAA says hobbyists can operate drones under 55 pounds as long as they fly under 400 feet and if the vehicle is always within the operator's sight. The tempting technology and an eager marketplace is overtaking the FAA's time frame for writing rules governing commercial use of drones.
We have to do something sooner than later. If not, the industry will create itself. And if the industry creates itself, then trying to regulate it after the fact is going to be 100 times harder.
In the meantime, there's a lot of gray area. An NTSB judge recently overturned a $10,000 fine on the makers of this film, Team Black Sheep, for reckless operation of an unmanned vehicle. The company is known for shooting and posting videos that push the boundaries. The agency now is appealing the decision.
The rest of the world is already doing this. Okay, this is not something that we're just the only ones. So it's going to happen, you know, with or without us.
Outside the U.S., unmanned vehicles are used for scores of tasks. One company called Matternet has a project in Haiti to deliver medicine to isolated mountaintop villages.
They're like totally disconnected from all, medical services. It's impossible to get vaccines reliably to them. It's very hard to give them access to consumer goods, and it's extremely hard for them to get their goods to market.
There's little doubt that drones will revolutionize communication and travel in the future. Meanwhile, the FAA says the goal here is to make sure the domestic airspace is safe for all to fly. But pressure is building to publish the rules. Susie Pinto, EWTN News Nightly.
Fascinating. Thank you, Susie. Some of the Catholic Church's most historic documents will soon be available online. The Vatican Apostolic Library is contracting with a Japanese company to initially digitize 3,000 fragile manuscripts for study by scholars worldwide. That's 1.5 million pages. It'll take about 4 years and cost more than $22 million. Ultimately, the goal is to make 82,000 manuscripts accessible by computer. Well, it's official. A Swiss Emmentaler has won this year's World Cheese Championship. The Big Wheel Swiss took top honors out of 2,615 entries from 22 countries. One judge says the winner delighted his taste buds.
It had an excellent flavor. The eye formation was perfect. It was, the body and texture was everything that we looked for, and a great piece of cheese to sell at retail.
U.S. cheesemakers dominated the competition, winning gold medals in 59 of the 90 categories. Switzerland came in second, the Netherlands third. The Wisconsin Cheesemakers Association is the host of that competition, held every 2 years. Well, it may not feel like it for some, but today is the first day of spring. The vernal equinox, when the sun is directly over the equator, occurred early this afternoon. Today through the next 6 months, the sun's direct rays shift into the northern hemisphere, so it should warm up. The date of the vernal equinox moves. It was on March 20th last year and again this year, but it can also occur on March 21st. Thank you so much for joining us on this first day of spring and our first Thursday broadcast. We're back again next week, Tuesday through Thursday. But before we go, we want to leave you tonight with the beautiful voices of a boys' choir from Spain with roots going back to the 13th century. They're performing for the first time in the U.S. for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. Good night and God bless you.
The Escolania de Montserrat is a liturgic choir. It's a choir who belongs to the Montserrat Abbey near Barcelona. These boys spend 4 or 5 years in Montserrat. They enter at 9 years old until 14 years old.
I like to sing. It makes me feel happy, and it takes away all my worries.